I'm most proud of the fact that I became a copywriter without having to go get a degree for it. Because I was very hard on myself. Like during those times where I was working on Upwork, like I look back and I cry because like I remember like going through all the hardships and then like, crying in my basement suite, wondering like, is this gonna pan out? Is it gonna, like, when is it gonna, it's emotionally super stressful for a lot of people because, especially if we come from the corporate world, because it's like a microwave society, right? We're just so used to like that paycheck every 2 weeks or like things happening instantaneously. And you can't have that mentality in business. You have to have faith and you have to have patience. Now looking back, I'm so glad that I managed to make it take off in a year and 8 months. Like I call bullshit on all those copywriting blog posts where they're like, you need a marketing degree. No, like I don't have that. And I was able to make a career out of it. And I didn't have to be $40,000 in debt. My name is Cecillya Simono-Kolev. I am 33 years old. I'm originally from Indonesia, but I grew up in Canada, so I consider myself Canadian. I'm scaling my agency. It's a copywriting, and we recently started doing marketing automations agency called Volcanic Content.
What was the journey like? Were you born in Indonesia?
Yes, I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. And then at the age of 3, I moved over to Canada. But funny enough, I don't really think about this a lot, but my parents actually immigrated first with my brother and sister, and I was left behind with the rest of my family and relatives for like a year, just due to paperwork issues and stuff like that. And then eventually I came over with my grandma, and then I grew up there.
So you're 33 now?
Yeah.
You were 3 when you moved over from Indonesia. Tell us about like your upbringing and also your schooling up until probably university. What was that like?
When you're a child, like going through the ropes, you don't know what's different, or like you think that the way you live is the same as everybody else until you get older and you get to know people. So in my mind, like how I lived was just normal. Once we got to Canada, like I went to public school and I was in an environment where like majority of people are immigrants. And that's what I want to also tell the world, because you become an ambassador when you're a nomad of your own country. And I notice a lot of people don't really know what Canada is actually like. And it's kind of similar to Australia. Like it's quite diverse. Canada, of all places, more so than America, is built on immigration. So it was cool to grow up in a community where it's colorful. It's like full of different cultures and faces. So as a kid, children are very like direct and honest. We would constantly ask each other, like, what are you? What are you? And what they mean is like, what is your background? What is your heritage? And I always struggled with explaining that, because in the beginning I would say like, I'm Indonesian, and I thought I was Indonesian because that was my first language. That's the language my parents speak. They're both from Jakarta as well. But then, I was also raised with Chinese traditions as well. So I'm Chinese Indonesian. Fun fact, I learned in Indonesia we're called chindos. So, which is quite common. And, but I identified with being Indonesian so much that I thought that's it. That's who I am. So as I got older, I think at the age of 9, at school we had to do like a paper mache project. Like we had to make paper mache masks based on like your culture, like a character from your culture. And so I came home one day, 9 years old. I didn't know how to use a computer back then. And I asked my dad to help me do some research so I could make some like Indonesian masks. So he goes on the computer and he's like, okay, you're Chinese. Let's start looking up Chinese masks. And that was my first identity crisis. I was so upset. I was like, no, I thought we were Indonesian. And I was crying. Like I broke down crying and ran away, into my bedroom. But then what changed everything was, once again, I'm a kid, right? Was when my dad showed me that I could make dragon masks. So that changed my mind immediately. I was like, okay, I get to make a dragon mask. Awesome. I'm Chinese. So it was that easy at that point. But as I got older, it was more difficult because like you would see, like biracial kids, but I would never see myself that way. So it was very confusing growing up. And fast forward to today, being nomadic tests that all over again. It starts to kind of helps me evaluate my identity once again, right? Because you see where you fit in the world. And for a lot of people that I meet, they struggle to put me in a box, let alone people who are even more diverse than me. So it is a little bit of a struggle because sometimes you don't feel like you relate to a lot of people. And even in Canada too, like you still have that mentality where, you know, our parents immigrated, we're here, we don't have to leave, this is the spot now, we're home, you know. And then you start to develop that small town mentality despite being like in a big city. So that was really interesting. And for myself as well, I didn't leave Canada for almost 30 years, so in my head I never saw myself as someone as international or anything. It was a weird concept that I actually came to learn like later on as I became nomadic, because anyone who would call themselves international, I assumed they were just like people who moved, you know, abroad to go to school or maybe worked a little bit. And I never really like had that experience. I just had my parents immigrate me as a child or as a baby. But now I'm starting to see like where I fit under that definition. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, like back home, Vancouver, BC, that's actually my city. It was quite normal to grow up the way that I did. And it was a great childhood. Yeah.
What was the decision to become nomadic?
Oh my God. Oh, so I spent my 20s like primarily doing, after I dropped out of college, because I didn't want to do veterinary medicine anymore. I went into sales right away. So I have a pretty big sales background. As I transitioned out, I got a cool office job. It was a pretty good office job. And that helped me kind of build some routine and stability around my life so that I can continue to like try different things. And ever since I learned that Jack Ma quote that everybody seems to reference in Asia, it really helped me see that I did live my 20s the right way. Like a lot of people are taught, like, you know, you finish high school and then you go to college and then you go to school and then you get a job and you work in an office and all of that. But like, and that's how you should be spending your 20s. But in my mind, it's like or not even in my mind, in Jack Ma's mind, I guess, your 20s are meant to be that time where you're just trying different things because you really don't know who you are. And then your 30s and 40s are supposed to be when you're actually building something or your passions or whatever. So that's how it was for me. Eventually I was in an office job and I was learning different things because I had the stability now of the routine to learn a side hustle. So I was working for a financial firm. So I was learning like finance. I was learning to see if I could maybe get a promotion there. But I also wanted to learn how to trade stocks. I wanted to learn how, you know, all the things that you should know in terms of investing for your retirement and your future, the FIRE movement. I was learning all of that. But the decision to go nomadic actually happened in like January 2020, January 2nd, actually. I remember that day. I was in Bulgaria and Sofia, Bulgaria, and our friend came over to go see us. Like he drove 5 hours from Varna to go see us after New Year's. And he basically just like sat there with us for an hour and pitched us on the idea of me moving abroad. So that seed was kind of planted. But I already knew about digital nomads at that time. So in my head, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it that way because I think it's just better. It's just easier than like moving to another country and potentially having to learn the language and look for a job. And I know I have friends that are doing that. They're expats in another country and it's difficult for them. So that's what I wanted. And yeah, like essentially the pandemic eventually happened and I got laid off. I was going through a lot that year, like in 2020, because like both my dogs died and my grandma died and I got laid off. So it was hard for everybody, right? But eventually, like after I got laid off, I took some time to like heal and get back into it. And I think like March of the following year, because I got laid off end of 2020. So March 2021, I was like actively looking for remote jobs. I was trying to just, you know, go after the low hanging fruit in terms of remote jobs and just get like a virtual assistant type of job. Because I figured like I was already working as like a receptionist / like assistant for all departments. So I figured, okay, I could just use that experience and just do the remote version of it. And I tailored like my LinkedIn profiles, my resumes into that. And I just, started applying. But the pivotal point was the moment when I did my last interview. And it was really awkward because I found the job on a remote job board, but I learned on the call, even though I was shortlisted, that it wasn't a remote job. So it was really awkward, and the hiring manager on the phone just like hung up with me. But before that, she's like, "Okay, I'll ask my bosses if it's possible, and let you know." And then we hung up, but it was so awkward. So after that call that night, I just had to shake off like the awkwardness and the nerves. And my husband comes home, and I think at that point it was also a tipping point because I saw one of my best friends who asked me about getting laid off because she had heard she was about to get laid off as well. And she wanted to use that opportunity because like due to COVID, the government was like supporting everybody financially to become a real estate agent and get her license and change careers. I didn't know at the time that was going to lead up to the Great Resignation. Google it in North America. So when I saw her do it, I thought like, okay, maybe I should be using this time. I'm laid off. Maybe I should just use this time to change careers and pursue what I want to do. So one of the side hustles I was at least learning about, I wasn't actually pursuing it, was copywriting and blogging. So I asked my husband, like, what do you think about me just pursuing freelance copywriting during this time, And he was super supportive, and granted, there are days where he's super anxious because it didn't take off right away, but he was like, yeah, go for it. And one of the things he always says looking back is that he noticed that I did seem a lot happier, despite like being broke in the beginning. So then that was it. And then that started like a 1 and 8 month long journey of trying to make it work. And at that point, it eventually took off, but we can go into more details.
So you started, most of your 20s was studying veterinary science.
Yeah. So like not most of my 20s, early 20s. So like the college years. I was getting prepared for veterinary school. So I was mostly studying like all the sciences, like general sciences, because you have to do that first for some reason. And then I took a little bit of art as well, but mostly just all the general sciences.
And then what age were you when you said, okay, I don't want to do veterinary science anymore. I now want to go into this sales job?
Yeah.
What age was that?
I think I was 22.
Okay. And then, so I'm trying to piece together. So then how long were you working in the financial sector? So 22, you shifted into sales.
So I shifted into sales, did that for, I don't know, maybe like so long ago now, maybe like 5 years. I remember I got the office job. I only worked at the office job for maybe like over 2 years. So 2018 to 2020. So up until that point.
And then 2020 is when the layoff happens, COVID happens. Unfortunately, your pets pass away and your grandmother. Yeah. Then that shift from working in sales into copywriting. Firstly, why copywriting?
So there were a lot of things that kind of planted the idea of copywriting. I think I first heard about it in a book. And then I think the tipping point. Okay, so actually, why copywriting? I was looking for ways like years ago to make money online, like, as a side hustle. And travel blogging was the first idea. And I thought in my head I would do a blog first. Hopefully it would take off. And then as a byproduct, I could start selling SEO copywriting services or content writing services or whatever. But because of the pandemic opportunity, I got to skip that step. And it's like, let's just build the freelance career right away instead and not build the blog. I tried to build a blog, but there was too much going on to focus on the blog because I needed money now. So the freelancing was the main focus. And yeah, copywriting, oh my God, it was a lot of different things that led me to that. But the girl who became the real estate agent, it started with her because when I was working at an office job, she got an office job as well working downtown. So we would sometimes like meet up after work and get a ride together because she actually lived near me at the time. And she like all of a sudden said as I was speaking, you're good at speaking. That's what she said. You don't have to agree. You're good at speaking. I think you could be good at writing. I can tell you're good at writing. Let me try to get you a writing job at my work. I heard about that. And so she like pushed me to apply for a writing job. That was the first time I've ever applied for a writing job, but that was also the first time I ever was told that I could write, right? And I think that was the beginning. Thank you, Hannah. Shout out. Yeah. Hannah. And that was the beginning. And then everything else just kind of like was the tipping point, like reading about it in books. That my brother, who is kind of in the digital marketing world, told me, oh yeah, SEO copywriting is a great gig. You can get paid like $50 an hour. That's what he said. I'm grateful to say I've been paid more than that and in USD. But like, it's not, but I didn't end up doing just SEO copywriting. Anyway, so yeah, like I think it started from her, other things happened, and then it ended with him, and then it really ended with, the whole layoff thing.
How did you teach yourself to go to freelance copywriting? And then how did you get your first 3 clients?
Oh my God. Okay. So I tried to do it on my own, and because, like I was doing it on a low budget, I didn't want to depend on my husband's income. So like I was trying really hard to just go on YouTube. That was the first thing. Udemy and YouTube. I used the both of them, and I did all sorts of things. I've tried to build a website. I went on Upwork and I went on Fiverr. So at some point in the summertime, I did do a lot of work over Fiverr and Upwork. So that helped me build my experience like really fast, but it didn't help me with my sustainability. I wasn't one of those Upwork workers that just like took off, or Fiverr workers, and consistently was able to get work. And then it became a problem for me as well, just because the competition is very high in terms of like the rates that you can get paid. So it's great for like easy work, like fast money, but it wasn't enough. And I was making no money. I was basically in the negatives. So, but it was great experience because that summer I got to write for like 100 product descriptions for like a Asian clothing apparel company. And then this year I went to Shanghai and I got to see the store of that company, and that threw me off. And then I spoke to some fashion expat locals, and they told me that it's like a brand that's like all over Asia, and they're actually higher quality than Zara. So I thought that was kind of cool because I've never thought, like, I didn't know I wrote for an Asian company. Anyways,
and they find you through Fiverr.
Yeah, and
oh wow,
I think this was Fiverr. This was Fiverr, and it was I actually wrote a social media post about this a few weeks ago. It was an interesting one because he like reached out to me, and it was late at night, and he's like, "I need them in 5 hours. Can you do this?" So I'm like, "Oh my God!" So I pulled like a semi all-nighter to get these descriptions out. Little did I know, like, when I went nomadic, I would eventually see the store in person. So that was really cool for me because most of the clients are all online, right? So you never get to see like, how they work in real life.
We'll get back to the podcast in 1 minute, but I just wanted to let you know the sponsor of this week's episode, which is me. So I've got a free 5-day email course that will help anyone with a 9-to-5 or a beginner solopreneur start and scale their business to $1,000 per month. So you can find the link in the description in this podcast episode. Click on it. It's free to sign up. You'll get 5 emails from me teaching you and walking you through how to start your one-person business and make your first $1,000 per month recurring. So I'll see you there, and thank you for listening to this episode. At this point, you've started the freelancing, you've moved past not making any money, you've gotten clients, you got this really interesting opportunity for this Asian fashion brand, which you got to see last month. So how did you transition from being a freelancer into now being a company owner?
Okay. I just want to point out during Fiverr and Upwork, during that time, I wasn't making enough money. I was making money, but not enough. So eventually, like, I feel like it is kind of important to mention the part before the agency part, like how I took off, how I got clients, and then how I got to the agency part. So eventually I got fed up and I was sick of doing everything on my own. And I think this was like New Year's 2022. Yeah, 2022. But luckily at this time, I was obsessed with being a digital nomad, right? I was going after my dream, going after like, that's what I want to become, right? So I was like listening to podcasts around the topic, watching videos, YouTubers, anything related to that. And on one of my favorite, there was a few podcasts for digital nomad podcasts, and there was this guy that popped up as a guest for multiple of them. So I would see him, and he was this nomadic copywriter named Francis Nyans. Shout out Francis Nyans. And he, at the time, I think in one of the podcasts, started in digital nomad newsletter. It's no longer a digital nomad newsletter. So I signed up for it right away. And then the moment I got fed up, it was like God's timing or the universe's timing. He decided to open up a coaching program to teach people how to write emails in Go Nomadic. Now, I was a content copywriter and doing like other stuff like websites and product descriptions, but I didn't know email copywriting. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need mentorship. I need guidance because I'm so tired of doing this on my own. And I'm willing to learn another copywriting skill if it'll help me get there. And so, yeah, I replied to his newsletter email because, you know, he was announcing it through the newsletter. And he selected 10 students. He didn't accept everybody, but like he selected 10 students. And in that moment, or at that time, I knew like if I'm the first, then it's perfect because I'm okay with like with working with someone that doesn't necessarily have experience coaching if it means he at least just has the results that I want. And that's the most important thing, right? Like I didn't really care about coaching certifications or whatever, because that also means that the rates are more expensive and I can't afford that. So his rates being a group type of setting, being the first group cohort, it was more affordable. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And then the kicker or the key factor was he promised, because he had so much financial vested interest in the first cohort, he promised to like refer us to his network. And at that point, I think I already knew like how valuable it is to be able to tap into other people's networks. So I knew, okay, like let's give it a shot. Was scared to tell my husband about it. Thank God he was supportive. And then later on that year, things took off. So you know, I had my wedding, I went to Europe, had a honeymoon, and I came back. And for maybe like just the latter half of the summer, so like July and August, I just started like messaging people on LinkedIn. He originally taught us to do it on cold email, but somebody in his group started seeing, started seeing results right away. So my coach or Francis encouraged me to just go talk to that guy. And that guy was like, Sales Navigator, LinkedIn, it's worth it. And then I did that. But the key thing was it was Francis that did help me get those clients. So it is like a referral thing, right? It is about like if you see an opportunity to tap into a network, do it. So he would tell me like this agency's looking. So I would use LinkedIn to hit up the owners. But the key thing was I had to mention Francis's name in the first sentence so that's the hook, right? In writing or in copywriting, that's the hook. So they need to see the familiarity. It's like, oh, this is a referral. So then they're more trusting. So I did that. And then eventually September hit. I started working with a Canadian solopreneur agency that in Toronto. Then September hit, American guy. Then right after that, Canadian guys. These are all agencies, by the way, email marketing agencies. And then Black Friday hit, a European one. So I started working for 3 agencies part-time, all email marketing agencies, all from different continents. So that was awesome. And that really helped me kick off my nomadic career. So by the time January 2023 hit, which was the deadline for my husband to fill out his citizenship application because he's Bulgarian, we were able to leave Canada, and yeah, the rest was history. Now, to answer your question about how I went, own an agency, that was kind of wild too, because so 2023, last year, that was our year for doing Europe. So we wanted to do Europe, and then we wanted to do Asia, hence why we're here today in Indonesia. But so what did we do? We took off. We spent like 4 months in Lisbon. No, 3.5 months in Lisbon, like a month in Porto. And then we went to Bulgaria because summer was starting, and Bulgaria is beautiful in the summer. And that was the whole start of the agency. So the funny thing is, on this nomadic journey, you're one of the few writers I've met, which is weird because this is like the OG nomadic like career, right? Like someone typing on their laptop, right? And I feel like developers just like made it mainstream, but we're the OG. So I haven't met any copywriters in real life unless they're in my program or the copywriting program that I was in. But that doesn't count, right? Because like you meet each other online and then you coordinate. But we were living in a co-living space, co-work nomads in Sofia. And this was around the time when Bansko Nomad Fest was happening. So May of last year, June of last year. And so people started coming in from, all over to the co-living. And it was late at night, and we were just all hanging out, like a bunch of us and a bunch of other people staying in the co-living, working in just chilling in the co-working area, which was on the top floor of this really cool old school like Soviet hotel. And this wonderful girl named Lucy Badui checks in that night, and she's up there hanging out. And it was my husband who actually spoke to her first, who met her first. My first impressions of her, or at least the moment I laid eyes on her, I remember just kind of like seeing her. And then moments later, my husband and Lucy and somebody else are like just chatting, getting to know each other. And then my husband calls me over and he goes, "Hey, she's a copywriter." And I was like, "Oh, cool." But then I was busy like talking to my friends. So I was like, "Okay, I'll catch up with you later." And then I had to go like do stuff. Eventually I came back and I talked to her and I was like, "Oh, cool. Like you're a copywriter." And, she was staying there for a week. So throughout that week, I got to like slowly kind of like here and there talk to her, get to know her a little bit. She was really cool. And that's all I wanted, just to get to know like another copywriter organically. And that was it. No other intentions. She was really nice. She was this Lebanese American chick, like from Washington, I think, or Maryland. I get confused about where she's from, to be honest. And I thought that was kind of like it, just like a cool new friendship, another female copywriter. But then fast forward to the next week, and it was Bansko Nomad Fest. And my husband and I had no intentions of actually going, but thankfully the co-living space was giving away 3 free tickets. And he jumped at the opportunity, so he got us free tickets. So we ended up going to Bansko Nomad Fest, which is awesome. And I saw her there because that's why she was there. She was there with her friends and people she was working with or whatever to go check it out and attend. And it was all part of a crew an association called Wi-Fi Tribe, which is a digital nomad like organization. So I met like a ton of people from that organization. And yeah, so it was difficult to get a hold of her throughout that week because she was just like busy, she was very active throughout that week. So when I did kind of like get a hold of her, it was one of the nights where, it was like a party. It was like a bonfire party in the forest. It was really cool. And I went up to her and I was like, "Hey, like, do you want to have lunch?" Because I knew like my moments with her were fleeting and I just wanted to know her story. That's all I wanted, like to know how she got into copywriting. And all I knew about her in terms of copywriting was that she's a brand copywriter and that she gets a lot of her business on social media. Like that's all I knew. And so she tells me like, "I actually don't have time for lunch because I have to work tomorrow." And the next day was like kind of one of the last days. But she's like, "How about you meet me at the park and then we'll go for like a long walk to my Airbnb and we can talk then." So that's what we did. So like in the afternoon, the day before or on the last day or something, I went over, I met up with her at the park in Bansko. And yeah, we walked for like 20 or 30 minutes to her Airbnb. So it started off with just kind of like her telling me her story. And it was really quick. Like, you know, she just studied marketing, but she also studied like fashion design and whatever. And she always loved supporting women. So she thought this was like the best way to go about it, writing for women. That is her niche. But that was like barely, like she just scraped the surface of a real story. She has a podcast where she talks in more depth about her story, and like looking back now, she like didn't really go into depth. But immediately she switched topics and she asked me about my story, and then she asked me if I would ever own an agency or would ever consider that. And that's not the first time I've been asked that question, because my own agency owner clients would ask me that, and my answer was always hell no. She's like, what do you think about buying an agency? And that was the difference, right? Because I had no interest in building one. I had no interest in building an agency or a business or a startup from the ground up if it wasn't like at least, me owning my own like brand or something like that, like a product or a different type of service. But I don't know what's the name of that type of business, but she had me considering it. And I think it's just because A, she was just so awesome, and then B, it would have been already built, right? So she had built the foundation of an agency, and that's why she asked me that, because she was looking to sell her agency. And that was the start of like a 6-month long acquisition process, and me like getting, us kind of negotiating, asking questions, doing my research, checking out like their website, whatever. And yeah, she wanted to sell the agency because she decided to work on a startup. So she has her brand, her copywriting brand. As she was building her copywriting brand, she ended up building the content agency brand underneath it, like housed underneath her main brand, the foundation for it. And then she decided, okay, I want to build a digital nomad app with this other dude. They're not doing it anymore, but because she no longer had time to give care about the agency, she wanted to offload it to somebody else. She tried to sell it on like one of those Flipper, I think is the name of the website, those websites where you sell businesses. But the only people that were interested were people that just wanted to flip the business. And she didn't want that. She wanted to give it to a writer or someone who will actually care about it. So I didn't realize that throughout the week, she would ask me like, oh, what kind of copywriting do you do? Oh, content? Emails? Perfect. Because she was taking notes.
So she was vetting you for a potential acquirer.
All I wanted was like a cool.
Let's have lunch.
So it was like, wow. And honestly, I felt honored because eventually I came to learn about how admirable her business is. And this is what I love about her, is that she doesn't feel the need to brag about her business or brag about herself or her accomplishments. It's also super annoying because she's way younger than me. Remember, don't compare. She's been in the marketing game like longer technically. And dude, she's like, when she said like, oh yeah, most of my business is on social media, blah, blah, blah. I didn't realize that she built like a $30,000 to $40,000 on average a month brand. Like, at the age of like 25.
Wow.
Like I had no idea. And a lot of it had to do with, I think for her, I mean, this is just a tidbit. It has nothing to do with me. But like when Instagram Reels came out, I think she really built like a lot of her momentum on using Instagram Reels. And that really helped. But yeah, so it was a number of different factors, like being able to negotiate the acquisition in a way where I could afford it, because I never thought in a million years I'm going to buy a business, right? She's still she's still part of the business. She's actually my advising founder, but I own and control everything. So like she has really not that much control over the business. But I know that because she's my advising founder, she would refer clients to me. And that's another reason why I really wanted to work with her. But yeah, and that's the rest is history. So like eventually I bought over my share of the business and acquired it this year. And this year I've just been adjusting and learning because I no longer write for agencies. So I stopped doing that this year. I came to learn later on that like it was difficult having a freelance or contracting career and building an agency. Like, I know that a lot of people with 9 to 5s, and they want to like transition into something else. They might have to do the whole side hustle thing, right? And if I were to advise anybody, like, that is the most secure way to do it. Like, unless you have a huge savings account or trust fund or something to go off of. I was just really lucky that, I had savings, I had my husband to support me, but I had the government as well. So if you have that opportunity to just go all in, do it. Because even earlier this year, balancing an agency, freelance business, and trying to build my own agency and live this life, right? It's difficult. And I would be very hard on myself and think like, oh yeah, because I'm not like my capacity, I'm not disciplined enough to be able to do all of this. But I started working with a coach, and she kind of helped me see like, you need to let's just focus on one thing. Let's just go all in on this. So now I'm all in on my agency, my business.
That is an incredible journey over the last, 12, 16 months?
Yeah, it's been over a year and a half. Like, it hasn't even been 2 years if you're talking about the moment we took off. Yeah.
What are you most proud of?
Oh, like, oh my God. Oh, two things I think of. First of all, I'm most proud of the fact that I became a copywriter without having to go get a degree for it. Because I was very hard on myself. Like, during those times where I was working on Upwork, like, I look back and I cry because, like, I remember like going through all the hardships and then like, crying in my basement suite, wondering like, is this gonna pan out? Is it gonna, like, when is it gonna, it's emotionally super stressful for a lot of people, because especially if we come from the corporate world, because it's like a microwave society, right? We're just so used to like that paycheck every 2 weeks, or like things happening instantaneously, and you can't have that mentality in business. You have to have faith and you have to have patience and belief. So that was super hard. So now looking back, I'm so glad that I managed to make it take off in a year and 8 months. Whereas most people in my shoes, they will just decide, okay, I'm going to do it the old school way because society accepts that. I'm going to go back to school, get a marketing degree, which you don't even fucking need to be a copywriter. Like, I call bullshit on all those copywriting blog posts where they're like, you need a marketing degree. No, like, I don't have that. And I was able to make a career out of it. And I didn't have to be $40,000 in debt. I would rather like barely make any money for a year and 8 months than to be $40,000 in debt, because that's worse, right? Or more. Maybe actually, I think the average degree is like at least $60,000 in debt. So, well, sorry, way more. Why did I say 40? I don't know. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say, and this really happened a lot like last year, was it got to a point where I totally almost Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week bit. So I got faster at writing, and eventually OpenAI came out and all my clients were paying for it, encouraging us to use it so that we can have a higher capacity and be better in terms of our efficiency and capability and, deliverability. But like, I bought my own account. I stopped using theirs because it was just better for me to just pay for the premium. It's not that bad. And as I got more and more comfortable, I decided, okay, now it's time to optimize. So I optimized all my processes. And then I think at some point on average, I was maybe working like 3 to 4 hours a day. So not 4 hours a week, but 3 to 4 hours a day, surpassing my last job's income. So I'm not going to say that, oh yeah, like I made high 6 figures in my copywriting career. No. But I'm proud to say that, 3 to 4 hours a day, sometimes even 2, while surpassing that income, and then at the same time making US dollars pretty badass because I'm Canadian. Those are the two things, I think. And so because I optimized my time and automated a lot of things, it actually allowed me to start going into doing more marketing automations, which is a service that I don't necessarily advertise right now, but it is something that we are offering because I've done it in my own business, and my own colleague actually hired me to do it for his business because he saw that there was a need for this. I kind of pivoted a little bit into that world as well, not just copywriting. And yeah, those are the two things.
So you've gone through quite a journey from your 20s all the way into your 30s, learning new skills, going through the struggle, sucking a little bit, going freelance, scaling up, and then acquiring your own agency. How did you handle the fear, the self-doubt, and the uncertainty that came along with that journey?
Well, after I finished crying, I think the easiest thing is to, well, you gotta surround yourself with your truth, right? So because your environment, you are a product of your environment. And if you're in a negative environment, it's going to be really hard to get out of that dark cloud. So I think for myself in the beginning, it was really just tapping into as many nomadic communities, copywriting communities as I possibly could. Like I've subscribed to all of the nomadic copywriters and just digital nomads and vloggers. And I just wanted to keep that vision in front of me. And of course, like I loved it. Like I genuinely would be passionate about it. Right. And then eventually with the whole, just joining that mentorship group or coaching group, that was another way of just like being in a group where people are in the same boat as you. They're trying to make copywriting work. So I know that's kind of hard to advise because that's something you have to pay for. But if you can find like a Discord group like that or whatever, and a community to tap into, that's going to be the place where you'll find if you don't believe in yourself, at least you'll be around people who do believe in you. So I think that's really the first thing. And then if you can, get a coach.
What did you value 5 years ago that you no longer value now?
Oh, yeah. I used to value the grind. I used to value, that toxic hustle culture, like hustle, gotta have a side hustle. Like you be a badass and like grind and pursue what you want. And I think I valued it because or I admired it because I didn't see it in myself. And typically you admire like, the traits that are opposite from you, like the good traits, right? And I never saw myself as someone that was like type A, go-getter, a shark, I wanted to be a shark. In a way I still do. But after I left Canada, and after I started working with Lucy as well, like it just shows me that, that whole notion is tested. So I value not the opposite now, but something that's actually parallel to that. I don't value grind anymore. I value flow. I value inspiration that leads, or, the motivation that you can get from just flow, meaning not grinding for 12 hours, but flowing for 12 hours. Because I've had those days. And consistency. That's also actually, I would probably say consistency before the flow part, because sometimes it might mean that you're 100%, after like 4 hours of sleep and maybe, you're feeling sick or whatever it is, like maybe that 100% that you're giving your all to that day looks like only 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever. It got to a point where I was just sick and tired of the whole overglorification of this toxic hustle culture, which exists, I know, in the corporate world, in the startup world, the male startup world particularly. It's just naturally the way it is. And I think it helped me see that this is something that's kind of considered more like a masculine trait. Flow is kind of more of a feminine trait, but it exists in everybody. You don't have to be like a man or a woman to have these traits. They just are what they are, and I just think you need to be able to embody both. I think that sometimes we glorify like these hard masculine traits, and then we diminish the value of the feminine traits just because you might assume that it makes you look weak or something like that. But in actuality, I think there's really a lot of strength in that, and it really helps you as well in getting through the hard times.
What's the most valuable skill you needed as a solopreneur and digital nomad?
Self-trust. That's a skill, right? Self-trust is super key. The ability to live out of a suitcase. I don't know if that's a skill. So minimalism, if you're good at that, if you can. What else? I think a lot of people say things like time management and all of that, but I'm not perfect at that. And I'm still a work in progress when it comes to that. So I just think that I could be an example of someone who doesn't have great time management skills and still made it work. But yeah, I think self-trust is a really big one because a lot of my friends who want to do what I do, they don't have that. And once you're out there, you're in the waters and you just have to trust that it'll be okay. So that's my biggest one. And then maybe the other one would be like the ability to make friends and network and talk to people because it can be lonely for a lot of people.
What's the biggest mistake you see most beginner solopreneurs or digital nomads make?
Well, one, sometimes they think they have to go back to school just to do the job that they want. I mean, it depends what you're trying to do, right? But like in the solopreneur world, like, no, I don't think you need to unless it's like a very highly specific and technical type of field that you have to get into or something like that. Like my husband's a remote engineer. Of course, you have to go to school to be an engineer. So that is like one mistake because I have a few friends that like went back to school to become a developer. And I'm not saying that you don't have to, but like there's alternatives, there's like boot camp programs. You don't have to like spend so much money and like go to school for like 2 to 4 years. Cause I know some of them are like 2-year programs, but I've heard of like shorter, like 6-month programs and stuff. And I know people who are self-taught.
What are some emerging trends or technologies that you're particularly excited about? And how do you see them influencing the future of your field?
Emerging trends or technologies. Okay, so the technology is one that is hard because it's moving so quickly. Like I'm learning about so many different tools, so many things you can do. I don't know if they're trends, to be honest with you. It's just things that I've come across because of the needs of my business. So like, for example, I don't know if this is going to be a trend and maybe this is a bad thing because I'm kind of like giving away a secret, but to be able to automate like my cold messaging on LinkedIn, but not just like cold messaging, because like that was kind of like back in the day you could automate that, but now automating the engagement aspect of it, and even like being able to use AI to write your comments for you, or like being able to send out invitations and like engage with this leads like profile automatically. And I'm just testing that out at the moment, but I feel like there's a future there for a lot of people in sales because but it has to be done in a way that's very personalized, or else you could do it the wrong way and it'll be obvious that you're being robotic or whatever. And then what else? Trends? I would say you're doing the solopreneur podcast. I truly see a trend in the one-person business. Like, I think before we used to think a solopreneur is like a stage in business, where you have to be a solopreneur first because you're bootstrapping and you're doing everything yourself. So you're solo. And then eventually you make a team where now you can have a brand, you can be an entrepreneur, but you don't have to have a team behind you. And I think that technology is changing all of that. The people around me are already doing that. I'm not necessarily the best example because I am working with writers. I am not the one doing the writing in my agency. So in a way, that's like a tiny team, but it's possible, I think. Yeah. And Lucy's an example of that. She's a one-person team. She works with contractors, so she does have a team, but there's nobody in-house.
What advice would you give for someone just starting out on their solopreneurship/digital nomad journey?
Just show up. Stay consistent. Eventually it'll work out. Make it a side hustle if you have to. Oh, and before you go nomadic, make sure you have a big savings account. And if you can, get a coach. But if you can't, tap into a group.
What are the 1 to 3 of the most impactful books you've read?
One would be Financial Freedom by Grant Sabatier. I read that in 2020 and it helped me see that he was another example of how SEO copywriting was a lucrative career. And then it also taught me about like kind of how to become the new rich, like how to not only go remote, but save time. And it's kind of like an interpretation on the 4-hour work week, but different because it does talk a lot about the FIRE movement. What does that stand for? Financial independence, retire early. So he does talk a lot about that. But I think it would be great for everybody to like read books similar to that, or at least that one, because that's the one that I read, because it gives you like an overview of kind of like all the things you need to set yourself up for to have this life. So like, it's not just about having the career or whatever. It's also about making sure you have the financial habits in place first, you know, saving or investing or, you know, just having those habits before you even think about like building a career and making more money. But it injects that aspect into the book as well. So I did like that one. Really, really basic one. This is just for the people who hate networking and hate talking to people, but How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's kind of like a classic. It's a super old book, but I read it in my early 20s. So that just kind of helped me see how easy it is to really connect with people and to help me be a better listener.
What advice would you give to your 29-year-old self?
I mean, immediately I think of the things that I wish I would have done sooner, but sometimes things happen in good timing, right? Like I wouldn't have found my coach if he didn't start, like if I had started looking for a coach way earlier because he didn't start during that time. So that is like one thing that I wish came into my life sooner, but you know, there's certain things that you don't always have control over. I guess my advice or to myself is to believe in myself. That's not really advice, but that's what I would tell myself. Like, you're gonna make it. It's okay. You're gonna reach your deadlines. Oh, and screw cold emailing. You're better off DMing people on social media. For clients.
That's very good advice.
Yeah.
That's very good advice. Where can people find out more about you and your business?
Yes. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's like linkedin.com/CeciliaSK or www.volcaniccontent.com.
And how do you spell Cecilia? Because you've got a unique spelling.
Yeah, I know. My parents, I don't know what they were thinking. CecilLya. And then S as in Sam, K as in kilo.
Is there any final message you want to leave with the audience?
Don't let the fear get in your way. Recognize when you have self-doubt. After I did this, I would talk to my friends and I've been told like, I'm not smart like you, which is weird because that's not a compliment I hear very often. But I'm like, no, you don't have to be smart to do this. No way. I don't think so. I don't consider myself like super intelligent or a genius to do this. And I just think that's someone who's speaking, it's coming from a place where there's a lot of self-doubt and it's understandable. It's scary. All of this is really new. But I promise you, the moment you start, you know, doing something different, and you see it work and you see the progress, it really does empower you. It really does help you develop self-trust. And although I'm still a work in progress with my confidence and all of that, I 100% believe in myself, and I think you should too. It's easier said than done, but just keep going because your confidence will increase. Your belief in yourself will increase. All of that will get better. We are people. Practice makes perfect. All those principles that you learned as a child will not change, and it still applies to your journey. So embrace those principles that you learned in school because it's true. Practice makes perfect. Can I just add this little tidbit? For example, like at one point, I mean, we slowed down in Bali, but for the entirety of our journey, we were like moving every 3 months because 90 days tends to be like the general allotted stay for tourists. And people back home or, you know, anyone that I meet that isn't nomadic, they'd be like, you guys are crazy. I can't imagine doing that. Moving every 3 months. It's exhausting. And it is exhausting. We're in our 30s, so we're tired. And it is. And that's why we slowed down. But the point is, like, we proved to ourselves that we could do it. We did it. Like, now it gets, every time we move to a new neighborhood or a new country, we can easily, like, figure out, on the first day, there's our gym, there's our grocery store, there's our, you know what I mean? So you get faster. And then as you get to know people, you get to see the way that they live. I have friends that travel every 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, I can't do what you do. But then I realize I can do what they do. I just don't want to. Right? But that's the point. Like, you don't know what's possible until you see what's out there. And you don't know what's possible until you try to do it. So just do it. Like, practice makes perfect. Period.
Hello, friends, and thank you again for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard and got value from the podcast, I would love for you to share it with a friend who also wants to start, grow, and scale their solopreneur business or on their own one-person business journey. And if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.